Well, good evening. Our guest this evening in the Rabbi study is Rabbi David Ingber, who's the leader, founder, and spiritual center of the Romemu community in New York and Manhattan. David, it's a pleasure to have some time with you together. Hope you're doing okay.
It's good to be with you, Ed.
Yeah. So tell me about your community in New York. How are you faring through this crisis?
I think like everybody else, we're in the dark about what the end of this might look like. And in the present moment, I think people are scared and they're feeling disconnected. And New York City is such a dense place, and even today, on the day of this recording, New York City saw a skyrocketing of cases. And so I think that our community is like every other New Yorker to some extent, wondering, you know, what to do, where to go, how long this might last. Are there going to be enough resources? There's all kinds of questions that range from the physical sustainability of this, their survival, and bigger existential longings for connection with community and stuff, and such. So we're like everybody else in that way, and I think that our spiritual community is deeply needing the resources of the tradition as well in this moment. So there's a lot of challenges for people in various ways that they're trying to deal with.
Let me call upon your powers of nevuah for a minute. And how do you think this might change us when this is over? And hopefully it will be over. How will we be different when we crawl out from our apartments and our homes and our caves back into the world of connections?
It's a really great question. I think that it might be premature to think about that in certain ways because we're still in the middle of it, and we have an obligation to be in a pastoral mode right now, and not necessarily. It's so much like you and me to think rabbinically, like, oh, what are we learning from this? It's kind of a natural predisposition that we have, and there are so many people right now who don't want to learn anything from this per se. They just want to learn how to kill it and figure out how to defeat it. But I think that one thing that will emerge from, without a doubt, whether we like it or not, is the power of the virtual community, the power of the in a way the democratization of spirituality, as that you don't need a synagogue building per se, although it's really great, and you don't need necessarily all of those other things to create community. We'll also leave with an appreciation for what is irreducibly happening in the in-person encounter, because of it'll feel so powerful, I think, for us to be together in community. So we'll know the difference between the two, but we'll also have ramped up our capacity to create community even in the lack of the physical proximity. I think we'll also learn, I think as a culture, we'll never be able to say ever again that we can't shut down the world, right, in a heartbeat in order to make change. I think that argument, right, in a way, again, without being political, I'm not, taking a stand for Bernie or not Bernie or the middle of the road Democrat or the conservative, all of that. But there's a kind of the seeing through of some of the things that we've said we can't imagine possible has now been shot through with holes. It's just not true. In India, just today, the prime minister has put 1.3 billion human beings on lockdown. Now, again, is that successful? Is it useful? We can have arguments from now until we should about whether or not that's a good idea and all of the collateral damage that it will cause. But there's no doubt that that if we wanted to, we can make big changes if there was a will to do it, and if there was a desire to do it in that way. So I think some of those things will come out of this, certainly in the broader culture. Spiritually, I mean, this is, how amazing it is that just being in interaction with one person can change the course of all of our lives. Just one moment. This is just, it's horribly painful to think about it. It's also beautiful to think about what we leave with one another, and the places that we go with one another, what's left behind, and the impact we have on each other. So all of those things are certainly on my heart, my mind right now.
That's really beautiful. I mean, in a certain sense, the whole world's been put into a condition of Shabbos. There's no commerce going on. and connection becomes terribly important to each other. We suddenly value what was once simply trivial connections. I took a walk. It was nice here for a few hours yesterday. So I took a walk outside, and it's kind of amazing because this is California. People never walk. I mean, you take a car, there's a mailbox on the corner, and you drive to that mailbox. So for the first time, there are families out walking together. And what's beautiful is you see a family walking toward you. Now, again, it's a modern society, so you either ignore each other or you're afraid of each other. But people stop and say hello. They've actually met their neighbors. They actually getting to connect with each other. Very strange revelation of humanity in conditions like this. And we can do collective things. I mean, who knew that America could act collectively? We're so divided, and we're so individualistic, and we're so about, me and my toilet paper, damn it. But all of a sudden, people are acting as a whole. There's some sense of solidarity as a community. It's quite remarkable, huh?
It is remarkable, and and obviously the places where it isn't happening also show the tension that has always existed within, at least in America, between the individual and the collective, and it kind of is bringing that into stark relief, and we're seeing it very clearly. But certainly, I said to my wife, that when we think of caloric intake, we know what it is to go on a juice fast or a food fast, right? But we don't really know what it's like to go on a person or a social fast. I've done it because I've done silent retreats many times in my life where we were told not to greet one another, right? So you would go through this yearning to say hello to somebody, and you didn't, and you kind of contained. And now we're going on like on a being in the same room with somebody else fast, and it's making it remarkably beautiful, like when you see another person's face that you haven't seen in a while, or you hear their voice, and you realize that there are kind of nutrients that are happening in these face-to-face encounters, that human beings are born in an intersubjective gaze between the infant and the caregiver. We are who we are because of the eyes that met ours and made our eye an eye through that connection. And so now it's like we're doing it virtually, which is beautiful, and it's, again, technology, but at the same time we have, as a society, we yearn for these connections, and we need them, and we can become emaciated socially from not being in touch with one another, and that's true. It comes and it reminds us in a way. Hazet Tzom Evchareu, is this the fast that I chose? But in a way, we're going to see what it's like to re-engage with social food, and how we take it in, and how we nourish it, and what isn't nourishing, and hopefully those things will become clearer. I'll tell you something, be really real. Like it's a big deal for me to be in the house with my 3 kids under 10 years old, and talk about exposure therapy. It's really remarkable.
You're learning levels of savlanut that you didn't know you had. You see,
exactly.
It's a level of parenting you didn't know you had.
It's true.
Ish tam yoshev halim. Now you know what that means. What it means to be yoshev halim, to live in your tent. Right? Esav went out into the field. He could get out of the house, but you can't. Right. You're stuck at home.
It's true.
So one of the beautiful things, I mean, it's remarkable, is that I scroll through Facebook in the morning, and there's so much Torah being taught. I caught your shiur this morning. It was just a wonderful shiur. So for everyone who hasn't found you yet, what are you teaching during this time?
So I'm teaching. So we weren't doing a morning minyan, actually, which is beautiful. We just bought a building here last year. We moved in this year, and we hadn't yet begun a morning minyan. We have Shabbat and Chagim and holidays, but we didn't do a daily prayer service. And so we started doing one every morning at 7:30. A member of our clergy team will be doing an online offering. And then I'm teaching at 10 o'clock, I teach Mishnah, 2nd century legal text. And I loved Mishnah as a young man. And so I'm teaching a chapter. I'm trying to go through a chapter a day. It's not that easy. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm teaching an hour of Hasidic masters, looking at the great mystical masters of the Hasidic movement that began in the 18th century, and looking at a particular thinker now that we might be with for a long time. His name is Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen Rabinowitz, the Kohen from Lublin. He was a student of the Ishbitzer Rabbi, and he's a really beautiful teacher of Jewish wisdom and Jewish mystical meditation and meaningful wisdom. And I'm also teaching on Wednesdays Agadic stories, Talmudic stories. I'll be teaching every Wednesday a story from the Talmud that might be relevant for our lives. I'd love to teach more, Ed. I'll tell you frankly, it's my favorite thing to do. Just open up a book and just learn together. But that's the thing with Zoom. You can wind up actually being busier than you were before Zoom.
Right.
Right.
But the wonderful thing that I've discovered is the reach of this thing. I mean, usually I send in my shul and I teach a little bit to wonderful people, but you're getting an email back from Nigeria or from Yerushalayim or from God knows where, and someone says, "I'm learning with you this morning." This is a mechia. It's a mitzvah. It's unbelievable.
It's awesome.
You're having divine omnipresence, right?
It's awesome. It's really great. And when it comes to Pesach, we should be thinking about this too, this medium, as well.
So let's talk Pesach for a minute. So this is going to be a most unique Pesach. A most unique Pesach. Families cooped up together, but without the reach of relatives, without the ability to come to minyan, to come to shul, without a lot of the shopping that goes on. People are going to be, it's a simpler Pesach that's going to be enforced. So what Torah for Pesach are you sharing with us?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, it's a little bit, it's funny. I got an email from a particular rabbi that both of us know, who had been asked about the relevance of the biblical holiday that almost no one ever keeps, for good reason, Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, the only one of the biblical holidays, and for that matter, any of the other holidays that we have that gives you an opportunity to make it up, a makeup exam. So the Bible describes in chapter 9 of the book of Numbers that there were a group of people who were tamei lameis, or they were impure, and could not therefore sacrifice the Paschal lamb in the requisite level of purity, and so they were given. They asked Moses what to do, and Moses asked God, and God says, "Yeah, they can do it on the 14th day of the month of Iyar, which is a month later." It's the only holiday that we have record of that you can do what's called tashlum, and you can make it up if you missed it, like a makeup exam. And so someone asked this rabbi in Israel if it was relevant this year, and he answered, from a Jewish legal perspective, in order for that to happen, we'd have to rebuild the temple, and we'd have to, all of us, be considered to be tamei lameis, being defiled by contact with death or a corpse. I think that misses the whole point. I think that this is a perfect time for us to think about Pesach Sheni and to repurpose it, to think about what it would be like to imagine a liberation holiday when there is really true liberation. I just want to first name that. I want to put that on the side. Of course, many people we're still going to keep Passover. So I think one of the things this offers us is, what would it look like to have a much simpler Passover? And what would it look like to imagine using the technology that we've discovered now with such ubiquity and with such power at our Passover Seder? So I think that I'm particularly thinking about people who are in isolation, people who actually don't have family to reach out to, or family that would invite them to, let's say, a Zoom or a FaceTime or a Google Hangout or whatever it might be. So I think that's our number one prerequisite right now, is to really think about isolation and Passover as a liberation from isolation as our first and foremost. That's like the first thing on my mind. The second thing on my mind is that there are ways to have Passover Seders, with just our family, just our immediate family, and that this is an opportunity to actually engage our immediate families in that way. And that's a super important thing. The third thing is, if ever there was a meaning behind the Passover holiday, it was the safety of the home, right? The Seder is a representation of the power of the home and not leaving the home, Dafka, specifically, right? We didn't leave the home. We didn't go through the doorway until after the Passover evening. So I just want to just remember that, because that was the original instantiation of this, and to kind of empower people this year to maximize the original Passover moment, which was family together in safety. And that's like, again, that's that. I do want to make a plug also for using technology during this Passover holiday, inviting people to use Zoom or whatever it is, and to say that that's a kosher way this year to have Seder.
That's wonderful. It strikes me that this notion of tuma, and the theme of basically life and death, which is an under theme of the Seder. The Seder is ostensibly about slavery, about physical slavery, about labor, but there's this underlaying. We're here in our homes, and the blood is on the door because there's death outside, and we're safely tucked inside. And for those who have come into contact with death, you have Pesach Sheni. And then at the end of the Seder, which I didn't get to till I was 17 years old. We were one of those families where Pop undid his belt, complimented my mother, and fell asleep. And we never got to the end of the Seder. But that was the end of the Seder. But the second half of the Seder moves from Pesach Shavar, the Pesach that was, to Pesach Latid. And it ends with this, Ve'ata Malchama, V'Kodesh Baruch Hu, V'Shachas L'Malchamavis, God comes and destroys death. Death is destroyed. Life is given this opportunity to fill the world. We're liberated from the greatest of slaveries. And that's an underlying theme here. I don't know if you have doctors in your community, but we have a couple of real heroic doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, and I've been speaking to them all week, trying to keep them strong, because they're terrified. These men and women who are so brave and so learned and so able technologically are dealing with something they're having a hard time fighting back against. And the exhaustion and the frustration is getting to them. So there's this notion of, let's liberate these people. Let's get death to let go of the world, and let people like these come and be with us and rest and be able to be refreshed again. The liberation from death.
The liberation from death. And it's so funny, because I think to myself, you just awakened in me something that I've been struggling with and thinking about a lot for the last couple of days, which is, like, when I saw an article in the New York Times about, in Iran, America was going to be sending something to Iran. They needed help, and they were going to be sending something to help them. And there was, the Iranian government didn't trust the American government or something like that. And so they rejected the help. Again, I don't know if it's true. It could be propaganda. It could be, again, I'm not speaking about Iran, America, staying away from all these things. But it strikes me as, what a global pandemic reminds us all of is that, Maslow was right. And, on the hierarchy of needs, survival, our basic needs, like just being alive. We all want to be alive, all of us, right? Before we become, a Democrat or a Republican, or before we become a Muslim or even a Jew or a Christian, before we become all these things, we have all of these things that we become, identities that we hold, and beautiful identities, lovely identities, right? But 1.3 billion Indians are in their homes, millions of Americans in their homes, and it's like the virus doesn't know the difference. The virus goes here, goes there. They look for a host. Happy to have you. And there's something, again, about the liberation, even from, believe it or not, even from a lot of the things that homes represent, like kind of some of the tribalisms that we hold, and some of the ways that we forget that we're all so similar in our deep structures, and how that affects and impacts this world, right? We shut down the world because we're afraid that everybody's going to wind up killing, right? We're going to kill the planet, we'll kill each other, right? Like, comes along Pesach and saying, like, what? There's a big home that all of us share. It's called the world, right? That's God is, wants a dira batachtonim, to use the language of Chabad, that the home that we all share is this world, right? And it's amazing how hard it is for us to remember that, right? It's taking a global pandemic to keep us all, right, from killing one another, but we kill one another all the time, any other time of the year, right? Right? For all kinds of really stupid reasons. and we killed the ozone layer. We destroyed this and destroyed that. And all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, the COVID-19 comes along, and the whole planet is in shutdown. And in a way, it's like we all share this home, right? We're sharing this home, this globe, and this world. And so maybe this Pesach we can lift up together, right? I know that sometimes Pesach is so deeply tribal. Trust me, I've stood together with many family members at various points of the Haggadah, screaming at the people who tried to murder our ancestors in various parts of the world and are still trying to. But like maybe also this Passover, as we gather together, we can remember how united all of us are as children of God. And we have important differences, right? And we'll be reminded of them, right, as soon as the global pandemic lifts. But maybe even this Passover, we can be liberated from the tribalism that threatens to destroy all of humanity and the globe itself. And maybe, right, even though we don't open the door, but we will open our hearts to people around the country and around the world who are scared of the Malach HaMavis. And together we can maybe think together, we want to kill the Malach HaMavis. We really want to overcome death for all of God's children. Maybe.
It's a beautiful prayer, David. Thank you. That's really lovely. So there's a beautiful Kabbalistic interpretation of the first chapter of Genesis, the third chapter of Genesis, that there were two trees in the garden. One was the tree of life and one was the tree of knowledge. And what they meant was that knowledge that distinguishes. One was synthetic and one was analytic. And there's two ways to look at the world. Look at the world as things divided from other things, separated, isolated, disjoined. And then the other way is the tree of life, which is chaim, which is connection. And that every moment of life, you have a choice between which tree you want to be eaten from. Do you want to be eating from the tree of distinction that tells me I'm not you and you're not me and ours are not theirs and us is not them? Or do you want to eat of the tree of life, which says we share a small planet, we're in this together, our destinies are tied together in ways that you cannot begin to imagine. Again, begin to imagine. And that's the only way to stay alive on this planet. And Pharaoh is that imagination inside of the head that says me first, right? What is Parua? It's the crazy ego that says me first. And that's what we're slaving to. That's what we're slaving for and trying so hard to escape from. All right, so give me one word of hope before we finish together. You're living in New York City. There's 20 million people stuck in their apartments. God willing that they're learning and they're growing like you are. But give us a word of hope before we finish.
I mean, I think the most hopeful thing that we can remember is that, we've been through horrible things. We've been through horrible things before. We as the Jewish people, if anybody can give a message of hope to the world, people who saw Auschwitz and Treblinka, people who saw, right, whose parents saw those things. We've lived through really, really, really horrible, unimaginably difficult times. And we have to continue to say to people that there's as long as we can, we can say, I'm alive today, that there's a hope, there's something that we can be grateful for. And that, when you're feeling hopeless, help someone. Right? When you're feeling helpless, help someone. Right, so give $20 extra if you're in New York to the people who are who are delivering things to your lobby. If you can't do something physically, imagine emotionally connecting yourself with some people who are struggling, who are out of vision right now, who are in need. Ask your rabbi, ask your community if there's someone whom you can call who might be isolated or scared. There are ways for us to bring hope, not just to find it, but to bring it. So bring hope. I think that's what I would say.
David, thank you. Wish your family and your community great blessings and stay strong. And we hope to see each other at moments of simcha and actually shake hands and give a hug and a kiss and take care.
You too, Ed.
Thank you for learning with me today.
It was fun.